Hey guys, welcome to Under Construction with Jerry Keenan, the Alliance for Actions podcast. This is where you can hear directly from the decision makers building a better future in New Jersey. Be sure to subscribe on your preferred platform so you never miss an episode. Now, here's Under Construction with Jerry Keenan.
And hello, I'm Jerry Keenan, the president of the New Jersey Alliance for Action, and welcome to Under Construction with Jerry Keenan. We have a terrific guest here today. What you'll see today and in all of our other podcasts is we all know our guests. They're very important leaders of New Jersey. We're going to learn about what they are professionally, but more important, we're going to learn about them personally. So today, I would like to welcome Jennifer Keyes-Maloney. Jennifer, hi, how are you?
So happy to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. And Jennifer is the executive director of the New Jersey State Association of Colleges and Universities, and she's got a long background before that. We're going to get into all of that, but real glad to see you. How are you today?
Oh, you know what? Lovely day in a very busy time.
That's good. So let's start off first by just talking about your role as executive director of the state colleges and universities. Let me ask you this, like everyone knows, okay, state colleges and universities, obviously working with educators, but the Alliance for Action is an organization that works to get capital construction out on the streets. Tell us why the state colleges and universities has been a member of the Alliance for so many years.
Couple reasons. You have workforce development, obviously, but you also have the fact that state colleges are building facilities oftentimes that end up training the next generation of workers. And so they need to be working with construction to ensure that we're forecasting properly where we can. It's also working with you folks to hopefully secure additional resources where necessary. Oftentimes we don't think of the need to invest in our state colleges and universities in a real meaningful way so that we're ensuring that we have the state-of-the-art labs, that we have state-of-the-art facilities. Oftentimes we're having conversations right now about simple HVAC and facility needs that are extraordinary, and we need to plan for them accordingly and address them appropriately. And working with groups like yours, we can hopefully get that done sooner than later to the benefit of our students and the state.
And it is amazing because most people don't give it a thought about the construction. They just walk into a building, a school building, or whatever the case may be. But in order to put those buildings there for the students and the leaders of tomorrow, you have to build it. And that means a lot of carpenters and sheet metal workers and operators and iron workers and so on. The list goes on and on, the plumbers, as well as the contractors, the architects and engineers. And then once all those projects are done, after spending those however millions of dollars, then you have a first-class facility that we always hear about, the brain drain.
Yep. Tell
Tell us about that, why it's so important to keep our students here in Jersey.
Yeah, so today we lose about 29,000 students a year. And the reason that's a shame is, when students leave, they don't always tend to come back. And if we want to, in essence, get to the innovative economy that we've valued so long over these many years and see it kind of springboard for the next generation, then we need to be investing today in their education here because they generally will stay. What's unique about the schools that I represent is that they are true regional publics, and we know from statistics that folks that attend these schools will generally stay in their region, build businesses in their region, grow their family in their region, and contribute to their communities. Mm-hmm. And when you invest in those anchor folks, in essence, you end up with a better, stronger economy that I think the state values and that we need to be investing in to ensure that we are truly the best version of ourselves as a state.
Jen, you are talking our language. Everything you just said now is what we, Chris and Bill and Sim and Elena, that's what we talk about when we speak about why it's so important for the capital construction industry to be strong, because when those capital improvements and infrastructure improvements are moving forward, what we like to say is you're building a better New Jersey. That's our slogan. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. But you have not been at the state colleges and universities your whole career. I want to talk about first, I can't remember, did you graduate undergrad with from the College of New Jersey? Okay. So you graduated undergrad from College of New Jersey, and then you went to law school. And how did you pay? That's a big nugget. How did you take care of that?
So in between undergrad and law school, actually my sisters went to the College of New Jersey as well. And so I was supporting them. And once they were through the process.
You and your sisters.
All of them. My brother decided not to. He wanted to go to Rutgers, and so he went to Rutgers instead.
For you.
But in essence, supporting them, it was a little harder to be able to do law school because back when I went, you had to complete in 5 years. And so I worked in business for a number of years. That's how I paid the bills. And that's actually how I ended up paying for the beginning of law school. And then I had the opportunity to kind of change career paths a little bit. My mom once said a couple years ago, she gave me a piece of jewelry that's a dragonfly. And she said that the reason she gave it to me is because it's one insect that actually can fly forward, backward, and sideways. And in some respects, career paths have to be like that in the future. And mine kind of was like that. So out of business, I ended up getting some really important project management skills that allowed me to work on grants and then manage the administration of grants. And that eventually led to back where in some respects I had been as an undergrad. Back at the legislature, I represented the state courts as their legislative person for a number of years while in law school. The best place to possibly be a law student is working for the judiciary. And then after law school, went on to represent school principals. That actually led to some really good information about school funding, which allowed me to parlay that into an opportunity with Treasury as the Murphy administration came aboard. And then I had the pleasure of working for the Murphy administration for a number of years. Went on to the College of New Jersey, actually as their government relations person, and then on to New Jersey Association.
I love it. A dragonfly can go so many different directions. It reminds me a lot of a people I know. I know there are a bunch of people I can call a dragonfly because they all they tend to go in any direction until one thing now and a totally different thing the next day. So I can name a few people that do that.
Absolutely.
That's so funny. Now I got to tell you, I went to Rowan University back in the old days, college, Glassboro State College, and college was 3.5 years, the best time of my life. By the time I got to my last semester of my senior year, the only good thing, and it was a great thing, the only good thing that happened was I met my wife. But other than that, I couldn't take it. And I'll never forget, it was like the old Mary Tyler Moore story. I stood in my apartment after graduation, after the ceremony, and no one else was here, and I looked around the walls, and I said to myself out loud, I will never step foot in a classroom again. And I haven't broken that vow, and I'm not going to break it. So I always go back and I look at people like you, and so many people go back to school for their CPA work or for law or a master's. It's really terrific. What made you decide to go through that agony?
What's interesting is that, in undergrad I had thought about becoming an attorney. And what's most interesting about that in a way is that I think I became a better attorney and used my degree in a different way, in part because I spent that time in business. I actually got to see the practical application. I went to law school at night, so I was working during the day throughout for the court and for other entities. And so that pragmatism informed my practice. It also allowed me to recognize that I had a really amazing boss at Judiciary who once said that it's my job as the legislative person to make a bad bill good and a good bill better. And so in some respects, that's been the adage of my career, is especially on the legislative front, but also on the regulatory front. When I worked at Treasury, I had a number of divisions underneath me. In essence, it's our job to just make it better, to make it work more effectively, and to fix the issues so that they don't become a problem going forward. And if we do that well, we end up actually saving time, money, and resources, and headaches, right? So talking with folks, figuring out why things are a problem, understanding how we can actually dissect an issue, and then get to the best solution. It's not always going to be perfect. There's a lot of sand in the bathing suit for lots of different things. But at the same time, if we can actually come up with a product that meets the needs of the most folks, then we'll have actually done something good. And that bad bill gets better, if not, becomes good.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Now, obviously, I mentioned a couple times your work with the state colleges and universities, but you're also a councilwoman
Yep.
in Ewing Township. Now, I always find that fabulous because, you're working a full-time job, and then you have to go to the meetings, and not just the meetings, all the stuff that you have to do to prepare for the meetings. And I used to be were you ever a member of the planning board?
I was.
Oh
I was
my
a member
gosh.
of redevelopment agency. It's that immersion in land use is so important.
Well, I was a news reporter first out of college, and the new reporter had to go to the planning board meetings, and that was like the ultimate not even the degradation of life, going to those planning boards. How do you, because I fought myself a few of this, how do you stop yourself from seeing someone go on and on and on and basically saying nothing? How do you stop yourself from picking up a chair and smashing over?
So interestingly, we had a council meeting the other night, and we're
Boom, right over the head.
I was going to say, we had a council meeting the other night, and we're focused on right now a chicken ordinance of all things. We have
chicken ordinance.
Chicken ordinance. So we're regulating.
Not to be confused with the turkey ordinance.
Ugh, no, just chickens. Let's just start with no guinea fowl, just chickens. But we have residents who feel very strongly about their right to have chickens in the township, and those who are really worried about having chickens. And so even though it can sometimes be tough to hear their passion, it's important to let
Sure.
them tell you what it is that they want as we're moving through the process of hopefully adopting something in this next 6 months. And yes, I never thought I'd be regulating chickens, I will be honest with you, in a small suburban town, but we are. There may be pieces or kernels, no pun intended, that are going to be really important for us to hear from residents. And so what we did was we introduced we didn't introduce it, we actually released it for discussion so that we can get a sense of where any of the ideas are best put, and allowing people to have that opportunity, whether it be in a planning board setting and their residents, or they're a developer who has an idea, or in the chicken case, you may hear that bit that actually is really dispositive. And so listening to folks, even if it can be challenging, is important. That doesn't mean that I don't lose patience like anybody else.
For sure, of course.
We nicely say we had some residents on Tuesday who also were very passionate with their clapping, and so candidly, I had to say nicely to them, I appreciate your passion, but we can't have that for the purposes of the recording, right? So, and I think they understood. And I'm like, guys, I know that you have feelings, and it's important that you be able to express them, but at the same time, be respectful for the other folks who may be speaking to.
That's a great story. Now, I have a very, very good friend who lives in Hopewell.
Okay.
And I want everyone who's listening and watching to go Google the sound of an ostrich, because my buddy lives in Hopewell, and he has an ostrich
farm.
and it is the loudest thing you could hear. The screaming of this ostrich is incredible, and it's been a real thorn in his side.
I'm sure. And this is the boundary question. So when we're having the conversations about chickens, it's roosters.
Okay.
Not quite. Also, why I'm very focused on just chickens, not a larger fowl, if you will. But even the rooster question is something that you have to balance the equities between those folks who want the rooster, and I appreciate the benefit of a rooster, but you also have residents who live next to you and have to deal with a rooster who may be going off any time of the day. And so in some respects, it's trying to get to the best possible outcome given the facts and circumstances in a way that meets everybody's needs as effectively as we can.
Now, similar, not animals, but do you have pickleball courts in Ewing?
We do. We have
That's
a
a
pickleball
big problem.
league.
Well,
Yes.
because that's the biggest thing happening these days.
It is.
Everyone loves pickleball except for the homes that are near the pickleball courts.
So thankfully, we are lucky in that we have an indoor pickleball facility.
Oh,
in Ewing.
okay.
So it's a little bit different, but there's not enough room at that pickleball facility.
Oh, okay.
And so why that's a little interesting is we had a fire in my town about 18 months ago. Our community center burned down, unfortunately.
Ooh.
And so we're in the process of rebuilding. And so we heard from the community about all the things they wanted to put into this new facility. And the good part, if you can say there's a good part to a fire, is that it gives you a chance to rethink design. And so one of the things that we'll be thinking about and did think about as it related to the athletic facility inside the community center is pickleball.
Yeah. Well, I have to bring it up. We were talking beforehand and about your time in Ewing and some of these important issues and some of these more difficult issues. But tell me about the importance of a conjugal visit for a chicken.
So when you were talking about Hopewell, they actually had to address that in their ordinance, and they did, in fact, as it related to roosters. So one of the first communities in Mercer, to my understanding, and part of that is because Hopewell is a little more agrarian than, say, where I live in Ewing.
But what are these chickens in jail and need to have these?
Unclear.
I mean, what is happening
Unclear.
here?
I mean, I suppose you could maybe make the point that the pen itself could constitute as a jail. I don't really know. But yes, there is a conjugal
do they have
visit.
their favorites? Do they have their boyfriend they bring? That's mine.
I'm not really sure how that all happens, but they literally have in their ordinance the fact that they have the ability to ensure that there is, and part of the reason I believe is because it goes to egg laying eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly 100% certain how. Forgive me, I did live in Iowa for a number of years,
Yeah.
but I like my eggs, frankly, to show up nicely in the supermarket.
Yes.
And I will purchase them from the area ShopRite.
Well, I do hope they're practicing safe sex.
I do too. I really do. And I was like, okay, so this is something we have to contemplate. What we said was that, certainly as it relates to roosters in particular, no roosters, and we'll probably have to figure out a similar schema potentially, as Hopewell did as it relates to roosters.
Yeah, I would hate to see or hear what a conjugal visit for an ostrich might
No,
be.
I don't want to think about it. Well, and that was the other thing. Like we made a conscious decision even in the draft that we are just focused on chickens right now. Now, part of that is because and this is a perfect example of where land use regulation has to be precise. Our ordinance wasn't clear. It basically said that if you had below 5 acres, you weren't eligible to be able to have farm animals, of which chickens are considered farm animals. And so that lack of clarity, people decided to get chickens. Suddenly we have chickens in the township, and they're not necessarily regulated officially. And so we had problems with roosters, and we had problems with folks who maybe weren't maintaining their coops in a perfect way. Mm-hmm. So, part of our job as council members is to make sure that we are addressing the needs of the public, both sides of the folks who like the chickens and don't like the chickens in an appropriate way.
Wow. So you keep talking about how the rules are drafted. That must go a long way toward, or how does being an attorney help you do this job?
Both at the local work that I do as well as the state level, I think it really does give you some important skills in terms of just understanding how statutes interplay, understanding preeminence between federal and state issues or state laws, understanding how regulation works in coordination with statute. Oftentimes people don't necessarily understand those distinctions. And so just having that background knowledge has been really helpful to being able to navigate this world, maybe a little more efficiently than someone who doesn't have the skills. You can do this work. You just may need to, think about it as you're in a way that I've been trained to think about it. And so I've benefited from my experiences as well as my education, and I value both of them.
I want to get back. Earlier, you had mentioned that when you were going to school, you got a job to not only take care of your own bills, but you were taking care financially of your two sisters. That's got to be, first of all, very difficult. And how did that happen?
So my dad, who's now deceased, was a minister, didn't make a whole lot. My mom is a school teacher, actually retired as well. Also didn't make a whole lot. And so in many respects, our ability to go to school was dependent on our ability to pull in resources like I was able to at the College of New Jersey. My sisters also decided to go there. I knew how tough it had been actually getting through school myself. And so, having them live with me ended up making the most sense. I lived in Ewing. I was working in Trenton at the time. So they came to live with me. I will say 3 girls in a house. Bathroom time was really tough.
I was going to ask, how many bathrooms?
Only one, but we made it work. And in some respects, it it was a good chance to see my sisters as grown-ups, right?
Yeah.
So there's
Are
about
they
5
much younger
years.
than- okay.
They're about 5 years younger than me, and so having them become fully vetted adults. They're in those formative years when they're going to school. My one sister is a teacher. My other sister is an educator as well, but works with developmentally disabled populations. And so, seeing them become who they are was really, really important and a good thing to experience. Sans the bathroom piece of it. But no, it was good, and in many respects.
Did you have all the clothes hanging from the curtain rod? And get this out of here.
There was never enough closet space, and I know that's terribly generous on my part, but there was just never enough closet space. But I will say, it was a good experience, and I'm really proud of them, as in their professional lives as they've evolved and grown too.
That is terrific, and in some way that brings us to the next thing I want to talk about. You are, obviously we're all family people, but that's a great example of how much of a humanitarian you are. And I did see recently, and I want to say congratulations to you. Your alma mater, College of New Jersey, is recognizing you next month with the Humanitarian Award.
Yep.
That's awesome. How did that happen? And what are your thoughts about that?
Unexpected, and truly, I'm truly honored. It's alumni from the college actually honoring their other fellow alumni. My understanding is that one of my associates actually from the college had kind of drafted the application.
Your help, I assume you helped.
I had no idea.
Wow.
It was a complete surprise, and so. Almost jaw-dropping. The work I do because it's important to my town and my community and the world that I live in, right? I don't do it because you expect you're going to be applauded.
Mm-hmm.
You do it because it's important to not just your own family, but the larger community family. And the reason, it's funny, because of my dad's job, we had lived in a number of different places, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania. I came back to New Jersey for high school and beyond. So, when I had a chance to grow roots, I did. And Ewing became that place, and it's given back to me in so many different ways. The college is part of that community. And so there's a symbiosis between the two of them, and I'm lucky to represent the college during the day and the town in the evening when you think about it.
What does it mean, because I have a story, but what does it mean to you that your college, your alma mater, is recognizing you like that?
It's actually kind of incredible. It's also, are you sure? And I think that's maybe, there's so much more work that still has to be done. Whether you're talking about the work that I do during the day in terms of making sure that our colleges, especially our regional publics, are as healthy as they can be, in terms of making the Ewing community the best one it can be, there's still so much left that isn't quite done yet, but it's actually really, really awesome to hear someone say, you did good.
That is a great feeling. Myself, by the time people see and hear this, I will have co-chaired the RIPAC Gala down at Rowan University. It's the Rowan Institute of Public Policy and Citizenship. And what it basically does is it creates dollars for internships and gives students a chance to speak about public policy and so on.
Which is important.
And I was, obviously I'm a graduate there, and I was honored. They asked me to co-chair the gala with Chrissy Bateas from the Healthcare Institute of New Jersey. Ben Dworkin is doing a terrific job. I could not be more proud of my college president, Ali Hushman. Dr. Hushman is a terrific leader. And the fact that they called me back, I was one of those guys where I wasn't even sure if I was going to get through college. Yep. And it was one of those things where they basically said, don't let the door hit you on the way out. We want to get rid of you. But and to come back all these years later is really a wonderful feeling. So what would you say, and we haven't even spoken about your time working for College of New Jersey. I do want to speak about that, but what would you say over the years, an attorney raising or basically taking care of your two sisters, being working at the Treasury's office for so many years, then going to College of New Jersey and the State Colleges Association. What do you think you look back on and say, boy, that was really great. I'm so proud of that. Or even sometimes, I didn't think I'd be able to do that.
So actually, Treasury is a perfect example there. So, I came aboard the Murphy administration as it was beginning its first term. Had the opportunity to work across, first as their legislative person, and then was elevated to assistant treasurer, working with taxation and revenue systems and unclaimed property and risk management. So quite literally, the happiest of those was unclaimed property. Risk management deals with the tort claims and workers' comp. Taxation is the engine of revenue, but it's fueled in part, I should say. It is the kind of engine in concert with revenue systems. So some of the bigger areas that I look back on is really what we did in 2018 in terms of different tax policy changes, everything from, some of the changes on CBT, which was pretty significant and not uncontroversial, but we worked through them as it evolved with industry. That was really, really incredibly important as it related to revenues for the state, but also, modernizing our tax system. There I also had the opportunity to work with the Division of Taxation on developing their new unified tax system. We were one of basically a handful of states that didn't have an updated tax system that connected the different tax classes. And we needed to harden our infrastructure, and we were able to do that. So I'm really, really proud of that. But I'm equally proud of the work that I did at the Principals Association, representing school principals on
I didn't know that. Tell me a little bit about that organization.
Yeah, so NJPSA, New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. I represented school principals and school guidance counselors and school supervisors, amongst others. And I had the opportunity to work on tenure and seniority while I was there because we had changes to the law during the Christie administration. Each of those things, you see the impact of your work in ways that you least expect. But again, it comes down to talking with folks and explaining why you and your organization has a certain position, why it's important, how it can be distilled down to individual language, and ultimately how you'll work with them to operationalize appropriately. That's the legislative part of the House. But there's other things that I've done even on Ewing's front where, a couple years ago we went through the process of getting sustainable Jersey certification. And while that can be somewhat difficult to go through, it was important for us as a community to recognize that we were doing things that were considered sustainable and resilient, and that included things quite simply like investing in energy efficiency in our buildings, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And why that actually leads to better outcomes. And so we always think of the kind of the landmark items as these big things, but they can also be really smaller but impactful things to an individual person or an individual community or an individual family. You never know.
So you're on the council, and at the same time you're working for the state. So when you're on the council, you're the one running for office and making decisions and taking the bullets if someone's upset. Now you're at the same time you're working for the state, and you have I guess when you first started, Governor Christie was the governor, and then eventually you move on Governor Murphy.
So my entire time with Treasury, I was just with Governor Murphy, actually.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Principal Association is when I was with Governor Christie.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I was going to say, still there's a lot of changes.
Absolutely.
And I worked for the state for 3 years, and back then it seemed like whatever was in the front page of the Ledger, that was the big issue of the day, and we attacked. And so you working for the state, there are changing opinions depending on who the commissioner is, who the treasurer
Absolutely.
is. So how do you balance that? And when you see that, how does it help you make your decisions as a councilwoman?
So one, I think when you're, as assistant treasurer, you're working with whatever divisions that you're assigned, you need to understand the work that your people are doing and how and why we do things the way we do them. That requires listening and hearing from them about how they operationalize their work. And then you have I would argue, a duty to clear track for them as it relates to the initiatives that they're tasked with. At the same time, you're also very candidly part of the policy driver, right? So your job is to say, okay, guys, this is what front office is asking for. How can we do this? How would it make sense? What are the challenges to it? And then communicate. Be that middleware between, if you will, the folks that are in the trenches doing the work oftentimes, if you will, the bureaucrats, and at the same time, the policy folks at the top who may have great ideas, but they may not necessarily understand that this could be something we need to think about. Perfect example. You know, we've done some really good property tax changes over the last couple of years. One thing that we looked at first was, is there a more efficient way to deliver that? And it turns out that electronic payments are a lot easier than paper checks, as an example.
We all do that. We do it at my house. We do it here.
So where we can do that, we should be. You know, my job at Treasury was to explain, okay, so these are the windows that are most appropriate for something that we want to do. If it's, say, a property tax initiative, here's how we think it could lay out. And that's informed by the work with my staff to make sure that I understand fully what their challenges and recommendations are, so that I can articulate them most appropriately so that we can get to the best outcome. If I'm clearing that track, that's what I would argue is clearing track, is getting those informational pieces, coming up with a plan with my staff, and then taking it back to front office. You end up with a better product and ultimately something that serves the public better. And sometimes that goes well, and sometimes it doesn't go perfectly well, but then you also shift based on what you learn so that the next time you do better.
So you're running a business during the day, and you're being a councilwoman at night. There is a constant give and take of this is busy and this is not so busy. But sometimes both of them are busy at the same time. When I look at people like yourself and handling two, I consider a councilwoman's job almost a full-time job.
It can be.
So how do you handle that? I mean, when do you sleep?
You know what? I have a notepad by my bedside that if I wake up in the middle of the night, I write it down, and that's, and just move on.
I'm the same way with my phone.
I have to. So
it used to be, I apologize, I was with my phone, and I would be firing off emails to the staff because I couldn't sleep, and I would send, so people were getting emails at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning.
That's why it's an open.
Now I've learned how to schedule my emails.
Absolutely.
So at 8 o'clock they get a flurry of emails.
Absolutely.
So you write it on a pad.
I do, because I would. That's the problem is, like, I think in some respects I've tried to be cognizant of folks' time and that family time that's really important. A lot of it is scheduling and sometimes admitting that you can't be somewhere you want to be, and can we work in terms of scheduling this differently? But it does work out in the end. There are times where, you may not be perfectly punctual. I hate being not punctual, but not perfectly punctual. Getting from, especially, perfect example, the budget message is on a Tuesday. I also have a council meeting that night. I was very, very focused on, I had until exactly this time that I needed to leave to be able to get to my council meeting at such and such a time, and also have enough time to maybe pick up an iced coffee on the way. So I did make it.
What are we, as we're coming, as the year goes on, and we have, there will be a new governor at the end of November, we'll know, or at the November election. And we really value our relationship and our partnership with the state colleges and universities. One of the things we want to work on is getting more funds, whether it be for deferred maintenance or expansions or whatever the case may be. What are the needs?
So just with the schools that I work with, we identified about $354 million in shovel-ready projects that could be done within a 2-year period of time. They are things that are not necessarily always the most extraordinary, but impactful. So they're HVAC systems, they are roofs, they are, upgrades to facilities. They may not be a whole building. They're going to be a portion of a building that just needs to be renovated to maybe be ADA compliant. Impactful to the schools, but not necessarily something that you would be able to pull in philanthropy dollars for.
I get it.
And so that has been our focus because we think it is the most mission critical. Every year, all the schools actually produce a list that they send to the state, and it includes those things and the more significant projects as well. But what I said to folks was, okay, what's so impactful that is, in essence, shovel-ready, so that we can move on them immediately. We know that there are some resources through potentially EFA as an example.
Okay.
So the question is whether or not those could be repurposed. We're one of only 8 states that doesn't do capital regularly, and probably need to get to that point.
Yeah.
This is one area where EFA, because of their actual resources, may be able to help stem that tide, at least in the short run. But the reality is that we're going to have to do a whole lot more. But what I've learned over a relatively long career is that I have to be an incrementalist. And so we start with the shovel-ready stuff. We talk about why that's important to our institutions and, more importantly, to our students and our regions. And then from there, hopefully, we eventually get to something that's more of a standardized capital. Right now, we're doing capital maybe every 15 years, and it's not frequent enough.
You know, as important as the funding for the capital improvements is, and to make, give us better facilities and better labs and so on, perception is reality. And I have 3 kids, they all went through college, and when we went and checked, I looked to see what's being built around here.
Yeah.
I don't want them being stagnant. And I think it's Alabama. I forget what school it is, but they spend a fortune on the lawns and the flowers.
Yep.
So when students and their parents come driving in, they're amazed by, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. And so it really is amazing what things like that can do. I don't know if that's something that our colleges look to do or not, but
I think they aren't able to quite get to that point, but they do their best with what they have as resources. Remember, I talked a little bit about the 29,000 students that we're losing a year. We're losing them to really the tri-state area. And, part of that is obviously resources. It can sometimes even be the weather. But it can also be that, in essence, while our schools are amazing, those additional pieces of whether it be the air conditioning in a dorm, or whether it be quite simply the visage of what you see when you enter the campus. Imagine moving that metric even 10% in terms of another 2,900 students staying in New Jersey. That's human resource capital that we are losing out to other states on. And I'd love to be able to pull in just a couple more of those students every single year. And I think some of the work around capital may do that. We're having some conversations right now because of the proposed budget actually doing a little bit of a haircut, pretty significant haircut to the higher ed sector. And so we'll be advocating vociferously for a restoration of at least what we kind of were able to build into the base last year from operating perspective. Each of those pieces are critical to our ability to maintain the actual training and support resources that we have for our students right now. And I believe that it is not just about educating students, but actually about keeping those human resources here so that they stay part of the Garden State and part of what makes New Jersey as an innovative economy. So.
Well, that's great. That stuff, and we can do all that stuff. All it takes is money.
There is that.
And we're going to work with you on
Absolutely.
that. Jen, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. This was really a great conversation, and we've known each other for many years, but I learned more things than I thought I would never know about you here today. So really great. I want to thank you once again for being on Under Construction. Under Construction is a podcast of the New Jersey Alliance for Action. You can get more information on what Jen is doing at the state colleges and universities by reaching out to her. The Alliance for Action, you can get more information on alliancefораction.com. Reach out to us on social media. Our handle is NJ Alliance for Action. And we're looking forward to seeing you. We're going to have more guests in the coming months. And like I said before, this is all about learning about the key people that are impacting the lives of thousands and thousands, if not millions of people across New Jersey. And Jen is obviously doing that. And we're really glad to have you here. So we'll see you next time on Under Construction with Jerry Keenan. I am Jerry Keenan, the president of the New Jersey Alliance for Action. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in. Under Construction with Jerry Keenan is a production of the New Jersey Alliance for Action. Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. To learn more about membership and events, go to alliancefораction.com. Together, we're building a better future. We'll see you next time.